Before Zuck, raids, and the fight caves, RuneScape's hardest boss was the King Black Dragon. This beast demanded the best gear, the highest skills, and a small army to take it down. But today, he's barely even considered a boss. It seems as though Jagex has abandoned him. But how did we get here? Well, the answer might not be as simple as you think. Back in 2002, RuneScape didn't have even a single boss outside of quests. The game was only 2 years old at this point, and the hardest challenge for most players was not getting decked by the Dark Wizards on your way to Varrock. Although most players were far from the endgame content the game had to offer, Jagex knew they needed something to keep their most dedicated players interested. Today, whenever the team has an idea for a new piece of content, it's a long process before we ever see it in the game. It's usually announced months in advance, has to pass a poll, and we know exactly when it's coming and where it'll be. In 2002, the process was more like, hey, we made this thing, it's in the game now, so go fight it. Where is it? We're not gonna tell you, so go find it yourself. That's exactly what happened with the launch of the King Black Dragon on the 24th of September 2002. Jagex didn't just neglect to tell players where to find the new boss, they decided to hide the entrance to his lair in one of the most dangerous locations imaginable. To take on the new strongest monster in the game, players had to venture deep into the wilderness, all the way to level 41. Just imagine if Jagex tried to do this today. I'm sure Reddit would compile some 40-page manifesto on why it's part of some secret PKer agenda. Now, this was at a time when the wilderness was extremely active. It was one of the few locations where you could find coveted resources like runite rocks, valuable item spawns, and powerful monsters with good drops. But the real danger wasn't the monsters, it was other players. PKers were lurking around every corner, and massive clan wars could break out at any moment. Now, at the time, the wilderness wasn't included in the game's official map, in order to keep it mysterious and scary, so it likely took a while before players were able to track down the entrance. But finding the entrance was probably the easiest part of this boss. So this is what the entrance looked like in Classic. First, you had to get past a group of level 79 lesser demons, and make your way down the ladder. Once inside, you'd encounter level 63 poison spiders, who, as their name suggests, could poison you. Then you'd pull this lever, and you'd finally be inside the dragon's lair. Luckily, once inside, you were no longer in the wilderness, meaning other players couldn't attack you. However, the real challenge was only just beginning. Right in front of you was the strongest monster in the game, the level 245 King Black Dragon. Now, his mechanics in Classic were much different than today in old school RuneScape. Some of them are downright bizarre, to say the least. So first, let's talk about something you'll love. Today's sponsor, Creator Crafted. They're currently having their Black Friday Cyber Monday sale. It's the biggest savings of the year, it's their last restock for Christmas, and last year, lots sold out. They have a ton of cool stuff, including 14 new LED sign designs. I'm a big fan of the Elysian Spirit Shield. It's a classic, so iconic, and my Iron Man will probably never get one. So having it in real life is even better. You'll also love their mouse pads, Crumb's golden gnome winning resin cast statues, their super cute plush lineup, and even these new metal posters. They have 5-star reviews across all of their lineups, so you won't be disappointed with your order. So don't miss out. Click my link in the description or use code NELLO for an additional 15% off the site-wide Black Friday Cyber Monday sale for the next 7 days. First and foremost, multi-way combat areas didn't exist in RuneScape Classic. For those unfamiliar, multi-way combat in modern RuneScape allows multiple players to attack the same target simultaneously using any attack style. In Classic, melee combat was strictly one-on-one, but there was a loophole. Magic and ranged attacks weren't bound by the same rule, so you could have as many friends as you wanted attacking from a distance. But they probably wouldn't be much help. For some reason, attacking the KBD would significantly drain your ranged level, and for most players, magic was simply too expensive to use. Now, luckily, the KBD didn't have any crazy mechanics to memorize. He actually only had one basic Dragonfire attack. which required you to wear an anti-dragonfire shield. I mean, technically you didn't have to use one, but that's only if you wanted to turn your trip into a one-way ticket to Lumbridge. Without one, you'd risk taking hits of 55 damage or more instead of being capped at 25. If you were super sweaty, you could also swap the shield for a stronger one after the dragon's first attack, as the game would only check if you were wearing the shield when combat started. Now, the KBD's lack of advanced mechanics didn't mean the fight would be easy. Whenever you entered combat with a monster in Classic, you were required to fight at least 3 turns before you could run away and heal up. With such a large max hit, even high-level players could get wiped out if they were unlucky. The KBD layer was surprisingly a pretty popular spot for low-level players, not to fight the dragon, but to see if today was the day that someone else's runeplate body would become their runeplate body. The chance of death here was pretty high. Now, those of you familiar with Classic may be thinking, why not use the Paralyze Monster prayer? While active, it completely prevents monsters from dealing any damage to you at all. Well, Jagex was one step ahead. Just like your ranged level, your prayer would also be drained whenever you attacked the KBD, making it impossible to rely on Paralyze Monster for an easy win. Overall, it was a challenging fight in a hard-to-reach location with plenty of risk both on the way there and during the battle itself. And the rewards were very worth it. The same day that the KBD was added, Jagex also released the Dragon Medium Helm, the new best helmet in the game and the third piece of dragon equipment to be introduced. The KBD dropped this helmet at a rate of 1 in 128. And if you were lucky enough to get one as a drop, you'd instantly become a RuneScape millionaire. This helmet was in high demand. Its stats aside, just look at this thing, it's awesome. Back in the day, party hats barely got a second glance, but this helmet turned you into Zezima levels of cool. Throughout the remainder of RuneScape Classic, the KBD held his place as the game's strongest monster, with its drops highly sought after. But he had to undergo a major rework when the game transitioned to RuneScape 2 in 2004. RuneScape 2 introduced several significant changes to how the game was played, including the removal of the 3-turn combat system, the addition of multi-combat zones, and protection prayers, all of which made the fight much easier. Recognizing this, Jagex knew they had to make substantial adjustments to keep the KBD challenging. First, the KBD would grow 2 new heads, all of which had their own new special dragonfire attacks. Toxic Breath, which can poison you, Shocking Breath, which drains all of your stats by 2, and Icy Breath, which freezes you in place for 6 seconds. He would keep the Dragonfire attack from Classic, but it could now also be used from a distance. And to add more variety, he was also given a new melee attack. Additionally, Jagex removed the KBD's ranged and prayer draining effects, as the new mechanics provided enough challenge on their own. Now, overall, I'd say these changes made the fight much easier for you to kill him with your friends, but much more challenging for solo players. That is, if you fought him the way Jagex intended. When designing the cave that housed the KBD, its designer made a mistake and added a few safe spots. If you positioned yourself properly, you could attack him, but he couldn't attack you back. You could even bring a cannon to make kills even easier. So in 2005, Jagex would do a big rework. First, they gave the KBD a new mechanic. If you put down a cannon, after a while, he would destroy it. They would also design an entirely new cave. A big old square so that safe spotting was impossible. Interestingly, the old cave wasn't overwritten and still exists in the game today. You can see it while exploring the Temple of Ikov dungeon. Nobody knows why Jagex didn't simply replace the old cave, as the new one would have fit perfectly, but it's a cool little piece of history to stumble upon in-game. Anyway, along with the cannon mechanic and a new cave, came a change to the KBD's special Dragonfire attacks. Previously, these attacks only targeted players within melee range, but after the rework, the KBD could unleash them on anyone, no matter how far they stood. Unfortunately, whoever programmed this change messed up, and instead of each individual head having its own special attack like normal, they all just come out of the middle head now. which kind of sucks. The other two heads just kind of sit there doing nothing now. To add insult to injury, the KBD was also no longer the strongest monster in the game. About a year prior, he lost that title to the Calphite Queen, so Jagex needed to give him some extra love. As a result, in 2006, they would update the KBD's model to the version we have today in Old School. However, another silly oversight came with this update. Just 3 months earlier, the construction skill had launched, bringing with it a new drop from the King Black Dragon, KBD heads that you could mount in your player-owned house. When the KBD's model was reworked, the heads weren't updated to match, and to this day, still haven't been. Mounting them now feels like flexing that time you bullied the KBD in middle school. Over the next year or two, not much would change with the KBD, aside from the introduction of the Draconic Visage to his drop table, a new item that you could attach to the anti-Dragonfire shield to make the powerful Dragonfire shield. Out of every dragon that could drop this item, the KBD dropped it most frequently, which led to increased activity here. And that brings us right up to Old School RuneScape, which launched in 2013. Since the game was built on a 2007 backup, the KBD functioned exactly as he did at that time. Now, in early 2014, the KBD would get 2 massive updates. Without them, I honestly think nobody would fight this boss anymore. First was the addition of the new Dragon Pickaxe to his drop table. This new item could only be earned by defeating wilderness bosses. And the KBD is the only boss who technically isn't in the wilderness that could drop it. For years, this became hardcore Ironmen's preferred way to grind for this item, as it was the safest way to do so. The KBD would also have a pet added to his drop table, the Prince Black Dragon. Upon defeating the KBD, you have a 1 in 3,000 chance of receiving this adorable guy. Fast forward a decade and not much has changed for the KBD, aside from a few small tweaks. Because so little has changed for this beast, there's hardly any reason to fight him anymore. And that's kinda sad. Many players feel that Jagex has abandoned what was once the game's most iconic boss, with some even calling for a complete rework to try and restore him to his former glory. Let me explain why. First of all, the King Black Dragon isn't even the strongest black dragon in the game anymore. Brutal black dragons are 42 levels higher and offer over double the GP per hour in loot. Although I should keep in mind that the KBD is still much harder to defeat both mechanics and strength-wise. It's just kind of ironic that the King Black Dragon is not really the king when it comes to levels. The Dragon Pickaxe, his most desirable drop, aside from the pet, is also no longer exclusive to wilderness bosses. Among other places, it was added to the Calphite Queen's drop table last year. First, she took his spot as the strongest monster, and then over a decade later, took his best drop. What's she taking next? His hand in marriage? Wait, that actually happened in RuneScape 3. There's even a souvenir mug to commemorate it? Anyway, lastly, considering how much stronger gear has been introduced into the game since the KBD's launch, over the years, power creep, combined with the introduction of super anti-fire potions, has significantly shifted the meta. Without any updates, the KBD has not only become easier to defeat, but has also lost much of the relevance he once held. He's become so easy that what was once a heart-pounding boss fight has turned into something you can casually walk away from your keyboard while killing. Ultimately, I think the KBD is a product of his time, but that's exactly how it should be. I don't think he needs some big rework like many players have suggested. He represents an era of RuneScape where bosses were simpler, mechanics were straightforward, and the challenge came from the danger of getting there, rather than just the fight alone. Revamping him would risk erasing that legacy, and turning the KBD into just another modern boss, which we honestly have plenty of. A big thank you to Creator Crafted again for sponsoring today's video, and be sure to check out their new products before the sale ends. Click my link in the description or use code NELLO for an additional 15% off the site-wide Black Friday Cyber Monday sale for the next 7 days. Check out the video on the right to learn about why Magic in RuneScape Classic was unaffordable for most of the player base.